Okay, I got a little project in the shop. This is something a neighbor brought to me. This is an old, they said it was from a school bell. The feller told me his wife was pretty aggravated that he broke this. Anyway, he brought it to me and said, "Hey, do you think you can weld that up with some brass rod or bronze rod?" So that's what we're going to try to do. I don't have the bell itself, so I'm going to just basically have to kind of come in here. It's a really good fit on the crack. I mean, there's a piece missing there. But I think if I can get this, what I plan to do is try to jig this up so that I can actually take it apart and do a bevel on both sides of this. That's about a 1/4 inch, a little thicker, maybe 5/16. Cast iron in the middle. But I want to be able to get a good weld in it. You can tell this has been busted before. I think, not 100% sure what they used, but it might have been brass rod there too. I don't know. I'm going to have to just get this really close and measure the distance here and make sure that I get it back where it was. I don't think I need the bell for this repair. I think there's probably a little slack in them. I don't think they fit that tight. But you can see once everything's, the crack's closed up there, it's going to be about where we need it. So another thing, and I'm not 100% sure about this, but I know when you do a weld like this on cast iron or any metal, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and heat that up and get a little bit of brass into the metal before you start. I've heard that called tinning, but you're not using tin, you're using bronze. But what that would do is make sure all the pores are, we wouldn't have any gaps in here, we wouldn't have anything that's not going to be able to flow together. And if you did that on both sides, I think that would give you a better result. Okay, so what I've come up with so far, I bolted this to the table and I've got it shimmed up so that nothing's touching on this side. This is all free to move. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's better if you let cast iron flex and move as it's getting heated. It does quite a bit of moving. But what I've got, I've shimmed up this side to match this side. It's like a piece of 1/4 and a piece of 1/8 inch plate maybe there, something like that. But whenever I get this gap where I want it, which I can kind of check up and down from this side, I can look at the back side, everything looks like it's coming in pretty close. What I'm probably going to do is, this is one way I think is probably the best to measure, is just to come across inside. Inside we're just a shade under 13.5, right at 13.5 pretty much, but just on the minus side maybe. The easy way would just be to blob over the top of that, but I want it to go, I want to V it out. I want to be able to get a good strong weld in there. Whenever you see guys that just put a bead on top of a crack like that, they're not really making things better. They're just making it harder for the next guy to come and fix it. But yeah, we come back to the same measurement. Every time I check it, I come back to the same measurement there, so I'm pretty certain I'm hitting the same place. I know where it needs to sit. I know how to set it up flat, so I'm gonna take this and grind it. And I'll probably I may use a sanding disc to do that, cast iron's a little different grinding. So I may use like a flap disc. We'll see. It doesn't take a whole lot to grind cast iron down. But anyway, I'll get that done and we'll set back up here. This is the tip I use. This is a Victor torch. This is a small torch. It's a 100C. I like the small size of it. It fits my hands better, but I can't remember if this is a number 6 welding tip. Number 2 welding tip. Okay, but anyway, you can use a regular torch tip if you don't have one of these, but I think these are a little bit easier to control the heat with. I'm going to just kind of heat these parts and pieces up, and like I say, I want to put a little bit of brass on there first. Oh, ladybug crawling on me there. Yeah, I better get out of here. Oop. I have a little air in my line. I'll set this over here a minute and we'll work on this side first. Burning off a little paint. And a little heat to it. You don't want to sit in one spot very long when you're preheating. You want to move around a lot. A lot of times I'll sprinkle, and this might not be the right way to do this, I don't know. But I find it works pretty good once you get it heated up. Go ahead and get some flux on it. It'll stick to it when it starts, you get up to the right temperature. And then whenever we get ready to do the bronze, heat that up, dip it in your flux pot, coat your rod there a little bit, and we're going to see if we can't get a little bit to, and this thinner cast iron, you got to be careful with it. It will disappear on you. So what I want to do is just kind of shine that up with that bronze. I don't want a thick layer on there, so I kind of spread it with a torch a little bit. If you kind of angle your heat, you can move it. I'm gonna say that side's pretty good there. I got a bit of a lump right there I didn't want. Now I need to do the same thing to this piece. So we'll do the same thing with this side. Almost looks like there's a crack right there. You can kind of see. Maybe not. That's just where I ground it. Whenever you heat that up, you'll see defects in the metal. The thing about having the flux on there is if you don't get it down in the cracks, it won't, your bronze rod won't flow down in there very good. That's what I've found anyway. Like I say, I'm not an expert at this. I'm gonna use another piece of bronze that's a little thinner. That I got 1/8 inch and 332, and I think 332 is always my favorite. something like this, you don't need a whole lot of, it doesn't take a lot of heat, doesn't take a lot of rods, so. And you could use a rosebud, you can use a regular cutting torch. It doesn't, the heat source is not that critical, I don't think. I like the welding tip because it's got a good pattern to it. Have to remember all this stuff's a little warm now. Let's see what happens if we set it back in place here. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. It's not quite lining up. So what I will have to do is heat this brass. I've got a knot right in there, a bump. So set your torch where your smoke clears up on your acetylene, and then just clean up your flame to where you got a nice blue. You don't want to go too much. You don't want too much oxygen. So that brass should every time I do something like this on camera, I think it's going to be a disaster. I'm just waiting for I'm just waiting for that to happen here. Something bad's probably going to happen. It's a little harder to get in line than what I was thinking it would be. So put a little seasonings in there. Flux just kind of helps to clean the metal up. And you can see I've got a thicker, this piece is thicker, heavier, it's going to take more heat. Most likely. I'm going to go ahead and try to get a tack in on this end here. And I'll check my measurement, see how we're doing. And once you drip a little bit in there, you can kind of manipulate that with your torch. That's one reason I like using the welding tip, is you got a little better control of the flow. Now, I've not ever been able to run brass rod uphill or downhill. It's usually best done if you're flat. So we are just right at, I'm liking the way it looks. We're right at 13.5, just a shade under 13.5. Let's set back up to a bigger rod here. I'll get a tack on this end. I might stop and look it over a little bit. But don't worry about ever getting too much flux. It will melt. And this first time over, I'm really trying to get it to work down into the metal, into the crack. I'm not real worried about what it looks like yet. You can always add more brass or bronze rod. I call it brass, it's probably really bronze, I don't know. got a pretty good pass in there. See how bad it moves. Oh, we're right there on the money. It's looking pretty good. It's going to be about as good as it's going to get, probably. So I'm going to just kind of take the torch and I'm going to heat that up and just let it puddle and make sure I don't have any impurities in there. What will happen if you got a air pocket like right there, whenever you make a pass over that, you'll find that air pocket. Whoop, come on now. I might have just a little too much on the, I think I got a little bit of something in the tip, but whenever you make that next pass over there, you'll find impurities, and you don't want to stack over the top of that. You want to get it cleaned up. And like right there, I've got a pretty good spot that's not wanting to, not really sticking to this one side. You got to watch that. I mean, if it's like if the bronze is not sticking to one side, that means something, either you don't have enough flux on it, or you got an impurity there that's not letting it. Okay, so that's looking better. And I've got a big spot here that needs to be filled in. I'm not going to concentrate on that until I get the main part of this welded up. And I'll probably have to change positions on it. So I've kind of got a good feeling about that part. Now what I'm going to do is just add some rod and kind of build this up. I may be doing this backwards, I don't know. But what you want to see is you want to see a nice pool. You want to see a nice weld pool. And you can add more rod, you can keep building up, but like I say, you don't want to get it so hot you start burning the good out of the metal. You can overheat it. Now once I get a bead down like that, sometimes I'll come back in and just kind of use the torch tip to puddle it back up again. And I can see an impurity there that's coming out, another one there. And like I say, cast iron I think is kind of a dirty metal to begin with, so you're going to find that. But if you kind of make a little bit of a, you can kind of make it look like you did a little weld there, like a, I wouldn't say a stack of dimes, but you can make a pattern in it that's more uniform and just looks cool. I've seen guys do this and they just blob everything up. Like I say, I may have to turn this piece over to get this side welded up here. So I think we can double check that measurement one more time. We are just right on the money. I can't believe it. I actually can't believe it. So, you can kind of see, hopefully, camera's still recording, right? You can kind of see, I got a little bit of a pattern in that, just from whipping the torch a little bit. Now the other side, you can see we got brass coming through, which is a good sign. That's what we wanted. We wanted that to come through. And I'm gonna start out kind of in the middle here and just kind of work that both ways. Get enough heat in there to kind of make sure we're melting that flux out. I remember my dad fixing a combine transmission with brass rod. And it was kind of funny because he fixed it because he ordered a new transmission case and he couldn't get one. And it was harvest time, so he fixed it, bolted it all back together. And I think he ended up getting a new one. I think he ended up putting a new one in it. But to be honest with you, I don't think there ever would have been a problem with the one he fixed. I think he was just a little nervous about it coming apart on him. I've got a stack of stuff there I don't like. It's a little too tall. So I'm gonna try to, if you get too much rod in there, you can kind of work it down by, get you a hot spot there and then just kind of push it towards it. Alright, now I'm gonna kind of do this different, work back from this side here. Actually looking pretty good, I think. I'm not real happy with this little corner right here. It's kind of ugly. But that's the thing with bronze rod or brass rod. You can really make it change shape. Pretty cool stuff. I like it. I'm gonna try to work on building up this little area that's thicker here. This is gonna be a mess. But once you kind of get an idea of what it should look like, you can make adjustments and you can stop. You can stop. If you think your metal needs cleaned, you can stop and clean it. Like I say, with using a torch like this, I don't think the preheat is as important. It might be on certain parts. We'll work on this side here first. And see, we got a lot of flux melted out, that's good. You want to see you want to see that. You don't want to see bare metal. You don't want to see bare cast iron. You want it to be wet with flux. I'm gonna let it cool down slowly and then I'm not gonna clean it. I won't let it cool down. I may even throw a blanket on it, just let it cool off really. Okay, I got the part cooled down. I'm gonna use a needle scaler and kind of clean it up. We'll see what it looks like with the slag knocked off. Well, I don't know. I think it turned out pretty good. Looks to be pretty straight. I got a pretty decent feel. I got a little thick here, but maybe a little bit thin there. If I wanted to really get neat, I could probably go back and fill that in a little bit more, but you can see It's not really perfect anyway. The needle scaler did kind of knock my weld finish off, but it's okay. It wasn't that pretty to begin with, so. Needle scaler is something I've been wanting to get. I just picked one up, put on my air hammer. So that's the finished product. Whoop. You can see, not too bad. I tried to fill in just a little thicker than the base metal. I got a little bit thin on that edge right there, but it's not too bad. I think it's going to work. I think they'll be happy with it. The bell will ring again.